A woman arrives at the police station to clean and notices inconsistencies in a murder investigation. She realizes the police have mistakenly labeled the victim's missing wife, Lynette Acosta, as the primary suspect. Without hesitation, she changes the label on the investigation board from suspect to victim. The next day, Detective Karadek is furious when he sees the altered board. Surveillance footage identifies the woman as Morgan, and she is immediately brought in for questioning. Morgan calmly explains her deductions. In the crime scene photos, Lynette's hair is stuck to the furniture with adhesive, indicating she had been restrained before the murder. This proves a third person was involved, someone who subdued Lynette before the crime took place. While the police verify her theory, Morgan is briefly detained. When new footage confirms her suspicions, she is released. The footage reveals a woman at the crime scene. She denies being there on the day of the murder, claiming she was assaulted by one of the victim's clients. The police, believing she might be the third person Morgan mentioned, shift their focus to investigating her. As Morgan leaves, she points out a critical flaw in the surveillance video: it has been doctored. She proves the video isn't from yesterday by analyzing the wind direction. In LA, summer winds come from the south, but in fall, they shift north. The video shows a south to north wind, but yesterday's wind came from the north, meaning the footage is 7 months old. She confirms this using the church in the background, which, like most churches, faces east, providing a reliable reference point. An officer fact-checks her statement, confirming that she is right. Meanwhile, Karadek meets with Acosta's daughter, who reveals that her mother had received a disturbing letter from someone named Sarah. The letter had caused tension between Lynette and her husband, leading Lynette to confide in her sister. The police decide to visit Lynette's sister to gather more information. Selena insists on Morgan's involvement, recognizing her instincts. The daughter, who has grown to trust Morgan, shares the last photos her mother sent before her disappearance. At Lynette's sister's house, Morgan immediately starts questioning her, unconvinced by her answers. Karadek, frustrated by Morgan's lack of tact with a grieving family member, orders her to wait in the car. Instead, Morgan storms off. Later, Karadek visits Lynette Acosta's law firm, hoping to retrieve the letter Sarah sent. The firm refuses to cooperate without a warrant. While Karadek is in the bathroom, Morgan unexpectedly hands him the letter, having retrieved it herself. Disguised as a janitor, she had snuck into Lynette's office and taken it. The letter reveals Sarah as a paralegal involved in a high-profile assault case against a client named Diamond, a man Lynette had been defending. Sarah had been assaulted by Diamond, just like the woman from the footage, and had sought Lynette's help in filing a lawsuit against him. Morgan deduces that Diamond may have killed Lynette to prevent the case from moving forward, especially if Lynette had started reconsidering her role in defending him. Karadek, furious, tells her the letter is inadmissible evidence and orders her to return it. Diamond is brought in for questioning. He provides an alibi, mentioning Fontana, a detail that piques Morgan's interest. Before they can press further, the law firm's executive arrives, exposing Morgan's unauthorized break-in. Diamond is released. Karadek, exasperated with Morgan's interference, tells her to stay out of law enforcement. At home, Morgan tries to comfort her daughter, who feels overshadowed by her intelligent younger brother and mother. She reassures her that she has her father's artistic talents, reminding her that her father didn't truly leave her. But her daughter remains unconvinced, struggling with feelings of inadequacy. The next day, Karadek arrives at Morgan's home, asking why she wanted him to press Diamond about Fontana. Morgan reveals that Lynette's sister had also been to Fontana, despite having an alibi. Seeking more answers, Morgan consults her neighbor, a flower expert, about how long a ranunculus flower takes to wilt. The answer: 4 days. During a school run, Morgan connects the dots. Diamond had sought leverage over Lynette by having an affair with her sister, ensuring that if Lynette ever turned against him, he could use her own family against her. She had spotted a Fontana souvenir at the sister's house, confirming her suspicions. Morgan proposes a new theory. If both Diamond and the sister had alibis for the estimated time of death, then the murder must have happened earlier than they thought. They return to the Acosta house. Morgan pieces it together. Diamond and Lynette's sister had gone to pressure Lynette into dropping the case. But when her husband intervened and pulled a gun, Diamond shot him. Lynette, as the only witness, was then tied up. Morgan notices the ranunculus flowers. Flowers had been fresh 3 days ago, but now they were wilted. Since the flowers last 4 days, this means the murder must have occurred a day earlier than the police originally estimated. Looking around, Morgan makes a crucial realization: the room is a greenhouse. Morgan reveals her theory. Diamond staged the crime scene, freezing the body a day earlier, and tampering with footage to frame his accuser. He later raised the room temperature to mislead the coroner. With Lynette still missing, they turn their focus to Fontana. Suspecting Diamond had taken her there, they locate her childhood home and find her tied up inside. The police move in, rescuing her. With the case solved, Selena offers Morgan a position as a consultant for the police. Though hesitant, Morgan agrees but on one condition. "I'll help you," she says. "But you have to help me first. My first daughter's father has been missing for 15 years. Find him, and I'll take the job."
You got a deal.
Case 2. Dancers in the dark. Damien and Roland, tap dancers, are practicing on a rooftop when Damien falls to his death and lands on a car. It's Morgan's first official day as an LAPD consultant, and her kids celebrate by making her breakfast. She's immediately called to the crime scene. Kaitlin believes it's suicide, but Morgan finds a phone in a crevice, knocked over by a tripod. The smudge patterns on the phone suggest a second left-handed person was present. Morgan identifies the second person from the phone as a Christian. Morgan also points out that Damien loved his car too much to intentionally damage it during a suicide attempt, leading her to suspect murder. Meanwhile, the burglary division enlists Selena's expertise to help with a series of jewelry store robberies committed by a hooded thief. She also finds buttock marks on the rooftop floor, indicating the second person likely sustained injuries from a fall. Morgan and Kaitlin visit Damien's mother, Whitney, at the hospital. Whitney says Damien, who worked at BSB, a car painting shop, had no enemies and was saving money for Broadway. Some of Damien's friends from the shop came to visit. Morgan notices two left-handed men, one of whom is Christian, Roland. She also spots a tattoo covering a stitch mark on Roland's elbow. He's invited for questioning. During Roland's interrogation, he confesses that a third person pushed Damien while he and Roland were dancing. However, CCTV footage shows no third person. Examining paperwork, Morgan realizes something about Damien's car. Paint traces were found in the trunk, and since Damien was meticulous about his car, she believes someone from a paint shop hid in the trunk, emerged while Damien and Roland practiced, and pushed Damien. Morgan and Kaitlin visit the paint shop and interview employees. Back at the station, they check alibis. At home, Ava shows Morgan a painting, prompting Morgan to show her graffiti photos by Ava's father. Ava doubts her father didn't abandon them, despite Morgan's assurances. Later that night, looking at the photos, Morgan remembers her husband's emphasis on lighting. She and Kaitlin return to the rooftop, where Morgan explains that Damien's car passed the CCTV at 2 a.m., and the moonlight was such that the culprit couldn't distinguish between Damien and Roland. They realize Roland was the intended target, not Damien. They try to contact Roland, who is at a party. Using the song playing in the background, Morgan is able to locate him, but they arrive to find him dead from a gunshot. Back at the station, the team reviews CCTV footage from the club, where Morgan spots a spark from a gunshot. She later notices the same spark in footage from the burglary case while she was taking a walk. She realizes the gun used in the robberies is the same one used to kill Roland. The spark came from an old gun. The team links the burglaries, and Morgan notes that the thief used a different getaway car for each robbery, except the last. She theorizes Roland might have been the burglar's accomplice but changed his mind after meeting Damien a month prior. Fearing exposure, the burglar tried to kill Roland. The LAPD arrests the paint shop employee during a burglary attempt. He turns out to be one of the men from the paint shop. Morgan explains that the burglar timed his robberies to coincide with officers being called away on backup calls. The LAPD staged a fake backup call to trap him. She had also noticed his guilt at the paint shop. The case is solved. Later that night, Morgan receives her paycheck and gets her car back, to her kids' delight. Selena tells her that Ava's father's abandoned car was found with a diaper box inside, suggesting he didn't abandon his family, but something happened to him. Selena promises to investigate. Case 3. The Climbing Killer. A man is drowned in a bathtub. His killer is unknown. The next morning, Morgan arrives at the crime scene, where Kaitlin is already investigating. He challenges her to prove that the scene was staged to cover up a murder. Morgan's eyes immediately scan the room, taking in the details. She notices streaks on the floor, a poorly folded towel unusual for professional housekeeping, and a wiped whiskey glass. These inconsistencies suggest a hurried attempt to clean up. She says the poorly folded towel was likely used to dry the floor after a struggle. The bartender confirms that the victim was last seen with a blonde woman. The team uncovers CCTV footage showing the mystery woman leaving the victim's hotel room alone. They also notice that her car was parked in a no-parking zone, yet she didn't receive a ticket, something only doctors are exempt from in emergencies. They bring the doctor in for questioning. She admits to a casual relationship with the victim. Kaitlin believes she's guilty, but Morgan disagrees. She remembers the candles in the hotel room. Candles like those burned for 4 hours, but one had been extinguished, likely when water splashed during the struggle. The other candle had only burned for an hour and a half. This means the struggle occurred much later than the doctor's stated departure time, proving her alibi. The real killer is still out there. Meanwhile, Selena continues her investigation into Roman's disappearance and tracks down an old mural he painted. Back at the station, Kaitlyn's team makes a surprising discovery. The victim wasn't who he claimed to be. He had assumed a false identity. That night, Morgan takes the evidence box home. Kaitlin comes to her house telling her it's a violation of protocol. She tells him her deductions. While going through the files, Morgan notices the victim's pants. They're impeccably tailored. A closer look reveals the stitching. There are no cross stitches, a detail she recognizes as characteristic of tailors in Madagascar, where cross stitches are considered bad luck. She also finds cement residue on his shoes, indicating he had been near a construction site. Following this lead, the team finds a tailor shop near a construction site and uncovers the victim's real identity, Eduardo. Eduardo was a rideshare driver, but his lifestyle didn't match his job. Tracking down his home, they meet his wife and daughter. His daughter mentions two things: a toy camera her father gave her, and a dictionary he also gave her. She also observes that Eduardo lived in an upscale apartment, far beyond the means of a rideshare driver. At home, Morgan confronts her ex, frustrated that he allowed Ava to bring a guy home. Their argument ends with him bitterly stating, "I'm just the manny, right?" before walking away. The next morning, Morgan pieces together an important clue. The killer entered the hotel room through the window. The problem? The room was on the 4th floor. Detective Oz inspects the scene and discovers traces of powder used by rock climbers. He also points out the building's crevices and grips, which would allow a skilled climber to scale the wall. Daphne uncovers Eduardo's bank transactions and finds a $200,000 deposit from an elderly woman. They track her down at a senior care facility. She has dementia and believes Eduardo was her fiancé. She had given him the money to build a house in Mexico. Her son, shocked, insists he never met Eduardo. He was up north when Eduardo was seeing his mother. Eduardo had clearly been running a scam, preying on the vulnerable. That night, Selena visits Morgan with an update on Roman's case. She has a photo of a mural Roman painted a month before his disappearance. The location was linked to criminal activity. As they talk, Morgan suddenly has an idea. She returns to Eduardo's home and searches the dictionary his daughter mentioned. Inside, she finds a hidden stash of cash. Then, she examines the photos taken by the toy camera. One of them shows Eduardo's tattoo. Morgan calls Kaitlin to meet her at the hotel bar. She asks Kaitlin who has access to rich, vulnerable women. Kaitlin says the bartender. As he says this, Morgan shows him the picture of the tattoo. The bartender, who is serving them, sees the picture and realizes he's caught and runs. He makes it to the kitchen, grabs a knife, but Kaitlin takes him down. Afterward, Kaitlin is furious. "You didn't tell me what I was walking into. I could have gotten stabbed." An argument ensues, and she quits. During interrogation, the bartender confesses that he and Eduardo ran scams, preying on vulnerable women, but he insists he didn't kill Eduardo. At home, Morgan apologizes to her ex, and while reflecting on the case, has another realization. The next day, she reveals her findings. The killer had to have short nails because they scaled a building. Kyle had been wearing a mountaineering club t-shirt when the police visited his mother. The culprit is Kyle, the son of the elderly woman Eduardo scammed. His motive was revenge. But something doesn't add up. Kaitlin points out that Kyle never appeared on CCTV. So how did he get into Eduardo's room? He had help from the doctor. She had unlocked the window from inside and been scammed by Eduardo herself. Kyle had met her earlier, trying to warn her about Eduardo, but she had already given him thousands. As Kyle is arrested, he says goodbye to his mother over a video call. Even in custody, he and the doctor blame each other, each insisting the other was the real mastermind. But in the end, both are guilty. Case 4. Survival mode. 2 young girls are trapped in the trunk of a car, clearly kidnapped. The narrative then shifts to Morgan, who has just received her LAPD consultant badge. She's in the bathroom taking celebratory photos when the children's distraught mother, Mia, enters, clearly in distress. The team meets with Mia, the daughter of wealthy hotelier Mr. Ashford, who reports her 2 daughters missing. Mia is estranged from her husband, Wendell, whom her father describes as a radical environmentalist, incapable of providing for his children, and who wanted his family to live off-grid. They suspect Wendell, as he was about to lose custody of the girls after being deemed unstable by Child Protective Services. Morgan and Kaitlin visit Wendell's remote cottage. They find one of the girls' teddy bears and, noticing survival books Wendell bought for his daughters, Morgan discovers a greenhouse. She observes that the plants are oddly disturbed, cucumbers and tomatoes planted together, something Wendell, with his knowledge, wouldn't do, leading to the grim discovery of Wendell's body buried beneath them. He's been dead for approximately 12 hours. They visit Mia's father, Mr. Ashford, to inform him of Wendell's death. They learn that Wendell was seen arguing with a woman with long red hair on the day he died. Morgan speaks with the cleaner at the Ashfords' residence, who tells her Wendell was a good man who adored his daughters. The cleaner also mentions seeing Wendell leaving Mr. Ashford's office. Morgan reviews the CPS report on Wendell's custody dispute and finds it full of inconsistencies. The report claims Wendell fed his children junk food, but he had a thriving garden for fresh vegetables. It also mentions an insufficient educational environment, yet the cottage was filled with books for the children. Suspicion falls on the red-haired social worker responsible for the report. During questioning, she defends her assessment until Morgan points out inconsistencies in her finances. She's short on cash, yet recently took a trip to Kuwait. Morgan notices a plant souvenir on her wall and slippers with a logo indicating Ashford connections. The social worker confesses to being bribed by Mia's father to write a false report. She also reveals that Wendell had evidence of Mr. Ashford's illegal hotel construction in environmentally sensitive areas and was planning to expose him. However, she denies any involvement in the kidnapping. Mr. Ashford is arrested. His driver provides an alibi, claiming they were together the previous night. However, he later admits he lied and doesn't know Mr. Ashford's whereabouts. At the station, Mr. Ashford admits to paying someone to deal with Wendell, though he insists he didn't intend for it to result in murder. He confirms Wendell was about to expose his bribery of a judge with a stay in the Maldives to allow construction in a protected area. The hired man is apprehended, but the children are not found. He claims to have backed out of the deal after witnessing Mia arguing with Wendell, shifting suspicion back to Mia. The team believes Mia killed her husband, but Morgan advocates for her innocence. They are unable to locate Mia. At home, Morgan hugs her daughter and kisses her son, clearly affected by the kidnapping case. While watching the news, she sees a picture of the missing girls and notices a detail. The mink in the picture has been switched. She realizes Mia has been selling her mother's antique vase to pay a ransom for her daughters. Morgan finds Mia at an antique shop, attempting to sell the mink. Mia explains she received a ransom demand and was instructed not to involve the police. She also says she went to see Wendell to beg him not to expose her father and that she didn't kill him. Morgan enlists Karadek's help, and they attempt to intercept the kidnapper during the ransom exchange. However, he escapes without a trace of the girls. Morgan examines the kidnapper's abandoned car. A radio broadcast about betting reminds her of seeing Mr. Ashford's driver when they visited the mansion. She realizes he was parked in a position where he could spy on Mia's room. She deduces that the driver, who is in love with Mia, orchestrated the kidnapping to appear as a hero and win her affection. Under pressure, the driver confesses, claiming Wendell didn't deserve Mia. He reveals that the children had escaped earlier that morning and fled into the forest. A search ensues, and the girls are found unharmed, having survived thanks to the wilderness skills their father had taught them. The episode concludes with Morgan and Karadek sharing a moment of camaraderie, and Morgan, finally able to sleep, returning home with a sense of closure. Case 5. Crooked. Begins with a vet arriving at the clinic for his night shift, only to find the doctor, Monica, dead with the word murder printed on a piece of paper. Morgan's at home making breakfast when Ava swallows something with juice. Morgan asks what it is, and Ava replies it's just juice. Morgan and her team arrive at the crime scene. After observing the scene, just as Karadek is about to wash his hands, Morgan stops him, shooting a tranquilizer dart to save his life. She later explains that the victim had an allergic reaction on her palms, with a paper towel beside her. The vet keeps exotic animals, and Morgan had noticed a poisonous dart frog missing. She deduces that the frog is in the soap dispenser, which is why the doctor was paralyzed while drying her hands with the paper towel. Just before dying, the doctor managed to order the printer to print the word murder. It's voice automated. Sure enough, the team finds a dead frog inside the dispenser. Morgan and Karadek visit Bethany, who had called the police to report the doctor, Monica, missing. Although Bethany doesn't know much, her son, Gavin, claims that a man had yelled at Monica the other day and gives a description. Monica's family is invited in. Her parents say they are estranged from her for 12 years. They show them a picture of the bearded guy, and Monica's father says he was the worst thing that happened to his family. The man is Shane. He dated Monica when she was 16, and Shane robbed a store in flip-flops and was arrested and went to prison for armed robbery. Shane is brought in for questioning, but since he's had an ankle monitor since his release a month ago, he's removed from the list of possible suspects. Meanwhile, Morgan spirals at home about the incident with Ava that morning, thinking she's doing drugs. She searches Ava's room and finds pills that look like birth control in Ava's room, but decides to delay questioning Ava on her ex's advice. Later, the team questions one of Monica's online haters, who claims that Monica incinerated his pet spider without consulting him, saying it was infectious. He admits he threatened Monica at her Hollywood address. At the same time, Morgan recalls seeing a Hollywood address on a food delivery receipt in the trash at Monica's apartment. The team visits the address and discovers more exotic species, revealing that Monica was also an illegal trafficker of exotic animals. Morgan finds a picture of Bethany and her son, Gavin, in the office. They also discover a coded list, discovered to be house listings abbreviations. Monica needed money to buy a house. They meet with the realtor, who tells them Monica had a partner and wanted to live close to them. It turns out that Monica wanted to buy a house for the woman she loved, Bethany, who had a husband and a son. Bethany confesses that her husband knew she was planning to leave him for Monica. Nathan, Bethany's husband, is called in for questioning. The team also finds a book on frogs with a coffee stain on the page. Nathan eventually confesses to killing Monica, but Morgan feels unsure about his confession. Morgan and her kids visit the store Shane robbed, and something clicks. How did Monica's dad know Shane was wearing flip-flops? That detail wasn't in the police reports. She proceeds to see Shane at the beach, where he works as a gym instructor. She notices his ear dimples, which match Bethany's son's. She then interrupts Karadek's date to inform him that Bethany's son is adopted, and he's actually Shane and Monica's biological child. Having both ear dimples is a sign of biological inheritance. Monica's teenage pregnancy was also the reason Shane hadn't disclosed her involvement in the robbery, and this is why Monica had been estranged from her parents, with her father particularly ashamed. Morgan deduces that Bethany learned the truth about Monica and her adopted son Gavin's relationship and discovered that it was Gavin, not Bethany, whom Monica wanted in her life. Bethany confesses to murdering Monica out of anger, realizing that she destroyed her marriage for Monica but their relationship had been a lie. She overheard Shane and Monica arguing, the argument the son saw. Shane asking Monica why she gave up their son for adoption. That's when it clicked for Bethany. Gavin is Monica's son. Nathan had confessed to the crime to protect Gavin, and he is later released. In the end, Monica's mother learns that Gavin is her grandson. Getting home, Morgan talks to Ava about the birth control pills, and is surprised to discover she's been taking them to reduce her acne breakouts. Case 6. Hangover. A young woman, Sam, wakes up hungover in her boss Elaine's trashed office to find Elaine dead with "forever" written on the wall. Morgan is cleaning when Karadek calls her to Metcalfe Tech Corp to investigate Elaine's murder. Elaine was killed with her own Female Innovator Award at her company's product launch for Canary. Sam, who claims to barely drink and is on new medication, is the prime suspect. She admits Elaine had become increasingly difficult to work with, especially with the launch of their new product. Sam's laptop shows a garbled search from the night before that she suspects was because Sam was intoxicated, and a notebook in her desk contains a drawing of Sam holding a knife behind Elaine. Despite the evidence, Morgan believes Sam is innocent. Elaine's husband, Eric, reveals he was Elaine's first investor and that she had enemies among her employees. He left the party at 10 p.m. Meanwhile, Tom, a janitor at LAPD, accuses Morgan of leaving cheesy smudges on doors. Something romantic is brewing. Sam's toxicology report shows diazepam and alcohol, which could cause amnesia. Daphne discovers Elaine wrote a check for $45,623 the night of her death. As party guests are questioned, many report a loud argument in Elaine's office. No one thought it was weird because Elaine is always cussing people out. The timeline of the murder is narrowed down by Morgan using the karaoke playlist. The argument in Elaine's office was heard while the entire sales team sang "Since You've Been Gone," ending at 11:01 p.m. Nothing Compares to You was performed at 11:03 p.m., and no one heard anything from Elaine's office during it. So Elaine was likely murdered between 10:58 p.m. and 11:01 p.m. Sam then discovers photos of herself with a doctored magazine cover, where Elaine's image is altered to look like a devil. The photos also show red lipstick, matching another employee, Denise, who confesses to a flirtatious kiss with Sam at the party. Denise also saw an unidentified woman with brown hair, an average build, and a square object attached to her arm leaving the party. Denise identifies the woman from an ad, Carmen Jimenez, who uses an insulin pump. Visiting Carmen's house, Carmen initially denies involvement, but Morgan points out that they just moved into a house they can't afford. Mr. Jimenez tries to end the interview. Morgan notices that Carmen is hiding her hands. Morgan deliberately spills a glass and Carmen reacts by reaching for it, revealing the bruises and cuts on her knuckles. That's enough to make Karadek bring her in for questioning. It is revealed that Medcare, Elaine's company, was paying Carmen off and even paid her mortgage. As Daphne is typing, Morgan realizes that Sam's seemingly nonsensical web search was actually a coherent phrase with a shifted keyboard position. Corrected, the search would have been "Faz lungs," which would lead to information about forever chemicals, PFAS, causing lung disease. This explains the significance of the word "forever" displayed on Elaine's office wall. Morgan confronts Carmen privately about her involvement, asking if Medcare was paying her to stay silent about their product harming children, including Carmen's son. Morgan suspects Carmen's concern for her son pushed her past her breaking point. Carmen confirms this is true, admitting she couldn't live with the guilt. This led her to attend the party, where she became enraged seeing people celebrating. She went to Elaine's office, wrote "forever" on the wall, and stabbed a stuffed bird, cutting her hand in the process. Elaine then entered and threatened Carmen with lawsuits if she spoke out. Although Carmen initially intended to harm Elaine, she lost her nerve and instead punched a photo on the wall as she left. Carmen insists Elaine was alive when she left the office. Morgan grows suspicious of Elaine's story about helping her niece with a product tied to her company. Tom, the janitor, interrupts. Morgan uses Tom as a sounding board, questioning Elaine's sudden switch to Chinese medicine when her background is in Western medicine. She also points out that Elaine doesn't have any photos of her supposed niece, while Tom says he has tons of his nephew. They theorize that Elaine's former assistant, Nina, who is interested in Chinese medicine and has a daughter, likely created the product prototype. Morgan believes Elaine stole it, planning to profit from it. Karadec questions Nina about Elaine allegedly stealing her product idea. Nina confirms she came up with it but was paid by Elaine and enjoyed the resulting lifestyle. She also believes Elaine genuinely wanted to help people. Morgan, observing with Selena, thinks Nina's smile indicates she's saying the truth. Nina then describes the horrific nature of Elaine's murder. Killed with her own trophy. Karadec, knowing only Eric has been informed of how Elaine died, asks Nina if she's having an affair with Eric. Nina admits to a relationship with Eric, claiming it happened as they both fought for Canary and wasn't intentional. The focus shifts to Sam as the prime suspect, but Morgan defends her. Morgan points out the unsolved mystery of a $45,623 check. This causes Sam to become physically ill and vomit. Afterwards, she confesses to Morgan that the amount matches her remaining student loan balance, realizing this implicates her in Elaine's murder and that her life is ruined. Morgan, while dismantling the murder board, recalls Sam's statement about Elaine's paranoia and surveillance. This leads her and Karadec to revisit Elaine's office, where they discover a two-way mirror concealing a camera behind Elaine's desk. The recorded video reveals Sam informing Elaine of her resignation and the reasons behind it. Elaine's attempted bribery failed, resulting in a physical altercation where Elaine attacked Sam. Sam defended herself, causing Elaine to fall onto her award, resulting in her death. Sam, in the process, hit her head and lost consciousness. Karadec believes Sam acted in self-defense and won't face significant consequences. At the end of the day, Selena invites Morgan for drinks. Initially hesitant, Morgan agrees. Before leaving, she cleverly leaves her phone number for Tom the janitor using chip dust on a glass. Case 7. One of Us. A man named Frank Weber is found dead in his RV. A week later, Morgan takes her daughter Ava to her workplace, the police station, for Yes Day. While Ava is in the restroom, a woman takes Lieutenant Mellon hostage, claiming a nearby box is a bomb and that there are more bombs hidden in the station. She has an accomplice who disarms an officer. They demand everyone's phones and weapons and order Detective Daphne to evacuate the building, leaving only the people in the room with them. The hostage takers shoot out the security cameras and reveal their motive: to free a wrongly accused man. They order the police to find the real killer, threatening to kill everyone if they fail. Those not in the hostage room, including Selena, Detective Karadec, and Osman, convene in the nerve center with SWAT. They identify the hostage takers as Army veterans Sergeant Brooke Kirkman and Sergeant Jeremy Davis, who have no prior criminal record. The team is now trying to figure out how they got explosives into the station and how to resolve the hostage situation. The hostage takers demand the release of Staff Sergeant Logan Hansen, claiming he's innocent of murdering Frank Weber. They force Lieutenant Mellon to relay this message to Selena. Selena, despite believing Detective Lavallee handled the Hansen case correctly, brings him in. Lavallee explains that Hansen is expected to receive a long prison sentence for Weber's murder. Weber, a retired master sergeant and military instructor, was killed with his own gun inside his RV. Hansen's fingerprints were on the weapon, which also had traces of acetone matching Hansen's home remodeling project. A bartender witnessed a tense interaction between Hansen and Weber the night before the murder. During interrogation, Hansen claimed he was home with his girlfriend, Brooke, an alibi she confirmed. Lavallee suggests a possible motive. Weber may have denied Hansen a coveted overseas post, triggering the murder. Hansen admitted to handling the gun at a shooting range with Weber, explaining his fingerprints. Despite the evidence, the hostage takers are adamant about Hansen's innocence, leading the SWAT leader to believe lethal force will be necessary. Inside the hostage situation, Lieutenant Mellon insists Lavallee's investigation was comprehensive and confirms Logan's guilt. However, Morgan disagrees, noticing a detail about the blood splatter pattern. A perfect corner indicates an object was moved from the crime scene. She suspects it might be a piece of paper, and with the hostage taker's permission, contacts Karadec for assistance. During the call, Karadec realizes Ava is at the police station and alerts Selena, who dispatches officers to find her. Morgan asks Karadec to search Frank's RV for the missing paper. Karadec accesses Weber's laptop and discovers he last printed a DD Form 458. Brooke explains this form is used to initiate a discharge. She argues Logan was a model soldier and couldn't have been the one Weber was going to discharge. The hostage situation intensifies when Jeremy discovers Ava and holds her at gunpoint. Morgan intervenes. Tom steps in to defend Morgan, but Brooke diffuses the situation, ordering everyone to sit down. Meanwhile, Karadec questions Frank's daughter, Lauren, who reveals her father, despite his close relationships with his soldiers, wouldn't discuss disciplinary matters with her. Lauren also mentions Frank canceled their usual Monday dinner without explanation. Kaitlin informs Morgan that Frank's phone, now in evidence, might reveal his whereabouts that Monday. Morgan relays that Frank searched for an address near Pershing Square, a known high-crime area, at 5:47 p.m. 40 minutes later, he searched for a private detox center, despite not using drugs or alcohol. This suggests he transported someone to rehab. Kaitlyn's attempts to get information from the detox center are blocked, even with the suspicion the patient may be a murderer. Osmond seeks the DA's help. Back in the hostage room, Jeremy becomes increasingly agitated, and Brooke tries to calm him, reminding him to stick to the plan. Jeremy suspects the police are planning something. Correctly. Lieutenant Mellon suddenly attacks Jeremy, attempting to disarm him. Brooke screams for everyone to freeze, holding up the detonator. Tom jumps into action to assist Mellon, and a shot rings out, hitting Tom in the leg. SWAT is ready to move in, but Kaitlin hesitates, fearing the bomb. A lowered camera reveals Tom on the floor, seemingly motionless. Just as Selena is about to order entry, Tom moves. Morgan and Daphne tend to Tom, whose artery was hit by the bullet. They struggle to stop the bleeding. Tom's condition worsens, and Morgan warns Brooke he'll die within 15 minutes without proper medical attention. She reveals she knows Brooke is pregnant, explaining Logan's refusal of the overseas assignment. Jeremy overhears this, feeling betrayed. Brooke confirms she and Logan are trying for a baby. Kaitlin finds a store clerk, who recalls a blonde man matching the description at 8:36 a.m. Security footage confirms this, showing the man in a field jacket, though his face is obscured. Selena distributes the photo, but Jeremy is frustrated by its poor quality, believing the police are stalling. Brooke tries to calm him. Morgan promises to continue investigating, but insists Tom needs immediate hospitalization. Brooke orders Ava to escort Tom out. Brooke and Jeremy argue about their next move, with Jeremy accusing Brooke of weakening. Morgan notices Frank's phone has no incoming calls or texts, questioning how he knew where to pick someone up. She recalls a receipt for an AirTag Frank purchased 2 weeks prior. She deduces Frank used the AirTag to track a soldier he suspected of drug use, confirming his location at a known drug den. Frank likely slipped the tag on the soldier and continued tracking him. Morgan points out the killer might still have the tag. The AirTag's location history shows it was at Frank's RV during the murder, and is currently at the residence of Ben Spoelstra, an Army reservist on temporary duty at Los Alamitos. Ben Spoelstra is apprehended with drugs and the AirTag in his possession. Brooke is relieved, believing Logan will be freed. However, Jeremy, in a shocking twist, knocks Brooke unconscious and seizes the detonator. He forces Daphne to call Lieutenant Solo, demanding a deal in exchange for not detonating the bomb. Morgan calmly challenges him, revealing that all plastic explosives since 1991 contain a detection taggant. Since the bomb-sniffing dogs didn't react, the bomb is fake. Morgan further deduces that Brooke, being pregnant, wouldn't handle the toxic chemicals required to build a real bomb. Daphne seizes the opportunity and tackles Jeremy. Jeremy presses the detonator repeatedly, proving it's a fake. Morgan reunites with Ava, promising to reschedule their yes day. Brooke apologizes to Morgan, who acknowledges her relief that Logan is free. Tom is recovering in the hospital, enjoying pudding, and shares a lighthearted moment with Morgan. Back at the station, Morgan receives a hero's welcome, complete with applause and a new desk. While Lieutenant Mellon still refrains from direct praise, he promises to stop calling her the cleaning lady, a small but significant victory for Morgan. Case 8. Obsessed. A woman is found unconscious on the beach. Morgan is called to meet the detectives there. The unidentified woman has blunt force trauma to her head and is presumed deceased. They consider this a murder, but Morgan's not so sure. She asks for Detective Kaitlyn's watch and holds it up to the woman's nose. It fogs up, which means she's alive. Back at the station, Morgan explains to Osmond that it's the Lazarus effect, the spontaneous return of circulation after failed resuscitation. Kaitlyn figures out the victim is Heather Wallace, a 27-year-old graduate student who was reported missing by her boyfriend Morris last night. Morris, who is much older, is brought in and confirms that the woman is Heather, and last night he was at home picking out tiles for his pool. Osmond informs Selena and Morgan that Heather isn't Heather, or a grad student. Her name is actually Penny Hall. They proceed to her apartment, and the landlord describes Penny as his favorite tenant. He also reveals that her boyfriend, Lucas Phillips, was murdered, and that Penny stayed home for weeks after he was killed. Morgan looks around and points out all the expensive shoes and clothing. There are lots of credit card bills on her counter, meaning she was paying for the items, not Morris. This isn't a sugar daddy gone wrong situation. Discovering Penny's murder board, Morgan realizes she's secretly investigating the murder of her boyfriend, Lucas Phillips, 2 years prior. She's assumed a new identity, dating a wealthy man, Morris, to gain access to the Marina Azul Beach Club, where Lucas worked. The team begins digging into Lucas Phillips' death. It was thought Lucas's murder was a robbery, But now that Lucas's death mirrors Penny's attack, it appears both Lucas and Penny were attacked by the same person. Morgan points out rice in Lucas's hair, and Karadec adds that he had antifreeze in his nose. Morgan and Karadec visit the club. Edward Wilson, grandson of the beach club's founder, shows Karadec and Morgan around. Edward's brother, Blaine, joins them, and the brothers recognize Penny as coming to the club with Morris. They also recognize a photo of Lucas and confirm he was a popular tennis instructor at the club. While conducting the interview, they get word that Penny has regained consciousness. Penny reveals she was attacked from behind while meeting someone who claimed to know Luca's killer, so she didn't see the culprit. She says this as she touches her diamond necklace, a gift from Lucas the week before his murder. Morgan asks about Blaine, and Penny reveals they had run-ins, with Blaine threatening to fire Lucas. Penny had been investigating Blaine, but Edward always protects him, making it difficult. Karadec and Morgan return to the club to question Edward about Blaine. Edward claims Blaine isn't perfect, but wouldn't hurt anyone. He admits to helping Blaine with rehab and money problems, but insists he wouldn't cover up a murder. Morgan notices a woman with a necklace like the one Penny received from her deceased boyfriend. It turns out that Blaine's secret lover, who is married, gave the original necklace to Penny's boyfriend to keep their affair quiet. She kept a copy for herself. This suggests that Blaine might have killed Lucas. Morgan re-examines the murder board and realizes they have the wrong time of death for Lucas. His shorts are wet, but his hair isn't, meaning the tide never reached the spot where his body was found. He was likely killed elsewhere and dumped on the beach. Morgan, unable to stop thinking about the case, visits Karadec at night. They work through the night, piecing together clues. Morgan suddenly realizes the murder weapon, a snow globe. Lucas had rice, used for snow, in his hair, and antifreeze, used to keep snow globes from freezing, in his system. Edward had souvenirs from his travels with Blaine except for Greece. Morgan deduces Lucas threatened to expose Blaine's bad behavior, drugs, affairs, fraud, to Edward, who killed him to protect his brother. Edward also tried to kill Penny. The police rush to the club, but Edward flees to a cliff near the beach. Using Blaine, the police manage to convince Edward to come down, and he is arrested. Morgan has dinner with Tom. They connect, and Tom admits he likes being around her. Selena interrupts, needing Morgan at the office. She found out Roman was in contact with Gio Conforth, a concierge who procures items for people on both sides of the law. Selena has located Gio and is bringing him in for questioning. Case 9. The Rams. Karadec calls Morgan to the scene of another murder. Despite her baby fussing, Morgan brings the child with her, prompting Karadec to question her childcare arrangements. The victim is Marvin Price, a well-known sportscaster. A witness reports that Price was run over twice, suggesting the act was intentional. Morgan's quick analysis of the scene leads her to identify the vehicle used as a Malaga Blue Jensen Interceptor. They then find the abandoned vehicle, confirming her initial deduction. Price's son, Dexter, arrives at the station. He reveals he was on the phone with his father moments before his death. During their conversation, Price had mentioned making changes to his will. Dexter reveals that his father's live-in house manager, Tiana Johnson, had recently been named the sole beneficiary of his estate, but his dad was about to change it to him. Dexter believes the change in the will could be a key motive. He also mentions that his father's last words were tiddlywinks. Meanwhile, Morgan's personal life takes an unexpected turn. Her relationship with Tom is strained. He recently finished nursing school and received a job offer in San Diego. After multiple unanswered calls, he assumes Morgan has lost interest. She insists she was simply preoccupied and attempts to make amends, but the prospect of a long-distance relationship looms over them. Detectives Osmond and Daphne interview Price's neighbor, who admits to hating Price due to their ongoing legal battles, but provides a solid alibi for the time of the murder. Morgan and Karadec then interview Tiana. She denies being Price's lover, stating he was like a father figure to her. She also suggests they look into Dexter, as he was angry about the will and constantly asked Price for money. Tiana's alibi is that she was at home during the murder. She insists her relationship with Price was not about the money. Leaving Tiana's house, Karadec catches Morgan having stolen Tiana's phone. He scolds her and makes her return it, reminding her of the legal ramifications of her actions. Morgan and Selena meet with Gio. However, Gio is only willing to share this information if they arrange for his nephew's release from jail and placement in a rehab program. The next morning, Dexter returns to the station seeking updates on his father's case. He reveals that he's struggling financially due to the expenses of caring for his autistic stepdaughter. He explains that his father refused to help financially, creating significant tension between them. Selena, needing Gio's information, enlists Karadec's help. Karadec successfully secures the nephew's release, putting Gio in their debt. Daphne discovers a critical piece of information. Price's neighbor owns a Jensen Interceptor, the car identified in the crime. However, the neighbor claims it was stolen a week prior, and a police report confirms this. He then adds that he regularly saw a man entering Price's garage while Price was away. This man was Tiana's boyfriend. The neighbor also recounts an incident where Price came home unexpectedly and caught the boyfriend in his garage. The boyfriend then sped off on his motorcycle. Morgan revisits recordings of Price's sportscasts. She notices that he frequently used the term tiddlywinks to refer to something he considered a waste of time. The detectives review security footage, piecing together the timeline. Suddenly, before anyone else can speak, Morgan announces the killer's name. She explains that while she accidentally had Tiana's phone, a call came in from Hollywood Auto, a mechanic that can hotwire a car. Looking at the footage, the culprit wore a specific French brand of tennis shoes. A brick wall visible in the background helped Morgan deduce the mechanic's height, 6'5". A quick look at Hollywood Auto's website revealed a photo of a very tall, attractive mechanic named Olivier Dubois. Morgan's theory is that Price, after being told about the motorcycle man, walked in on Tiana and Olivier having sex. Price then informed Tiana he was removing her from his will. In response, Olivier stole the neighbor's car to frame him for the murder. The detectives track down the boyfriend at a mechanic shop. When confronted, he attempts to flee, but Karadec quickly subdues him. Tiana is brought in for questioning. Olivier's alibi is that he was with Tiana, which she initially agreed to protect Olivier, but then confesses she lied, as his visa has expired. She confirms that Marvin found out about their relationship and told her Olivier was a waste of time. At that moment, Morgan connects the final piece of the puzzle. Price had been trying to tell his son that Tiana's boyfriend was responsible for his death. Tiddlywinks equals waste of time. Olivier is charged. In the aftermath, Tiana renounces any claim to Price's estate, leaving it entirely to Dexter. Later, Gio picks Morgan up at the mall and insists on meeting her alone, excluding her police colleagues. He reveals that Roman disappeared because he was afraid for his family. Morgan is initially doubtful until Gio mentions the Rams, a nick Roman gave his family meaning Roman, Ava, and Morgan. This intimate knowledge convinces Morgan that Gio's information is credible. Gio tells her he's leaving town but will be back, promising to share more information about Roman on his own terms. The mystery now centers on what Roman was involved in that caused him to disappear 15 years ago. Case 10. Shoots and Murder. A body is found at a playground, and the local nannies recognize the victim as Tara Foley, a fellow nanny who frequented the park. The medical examiner determines that Tara died from a heavy blow to the head. It looks like she was attacked nearby and crawled into the slide in an attempt to escape. With no CCTV cameras around and a time of death estimated at 10 p.m., the detectives don't have much to go on. The nannies mention a strange man who had been hanging around the park and seemed particularly interested in Tara. Morgan checks Tara's phone and finds 8 missed calls from her employer, Brett, as well as an angry voice memo. Brett and his husband, Jeff, tell the detectives that Tara had been their son Ward's nanny for 4 months. Brett claims he liked Tara and wouldn't have left an angry message if he'd known she was in trouble. They describe her as sweet and caring. Jeff remembers her mentioning a man who followed her everywhere, a guy with a limp who always had a French newspaper. Morgan immediately knows the best place to find French newspapers, so she and Karadec track down the mystery man. Turns out, he's a retired LAPD officer now working as a private investigator. And who hired him? Brett and Jeff, the same couple who directed them to look for a stalker. When confronted, Brett admits he hired the investigator without telling Jeff. Their previous nanny, Rosa, had been fired after a Facebook post revealed she let Ward wander into the street. Brett hired the PI after similar posts accused Tara of endangering Ward. Tara insisted the claims were false, but Brett wanted to be sure. The accusations against Tara were posted by a woman named Karina, so Karadec and Morgan pay her a visit. She admits she wrote the post about Rosa but swears she had nothing to do with the ones about Tara. After posting about Rosa, people attacked her online, so she deactivated her account. At Tara's apartment, Morgan and Karadec find evidence of financial troubles, a bottle of pepper spray, and a lawyer's contact information. Oddly enough, the lawyer specializes in immigration cases. Tara's calendar also shows she planned to attend church the night she was killed. Meanwhile, Oz and Chuck, the PI, go through photos of Tara and notice Mark seems a little too cozy with her. In one picture, he's even holding a bat that could be the murder weapon. Mark insists he and Tara were just friends. On the night she was killed, he was at home hosting a book club. He also proves the bat was just a plastic wiffle ball bat, with no sign of drugs or defensive wounds. The detectives conclude Tara probably knew her attacker. They re-interview the nannies, who finally admit Tara was underpaid, making $10 less an hour than the rest of them. They felt sorry for her, but she never accepted their offers to help. If she had, they say, she wouldn't have been alone the night she died. The nannies also mention that Karina once had a public meltdown, screaming at Tara and Mark at the park. Karina seems like a solid suspect, but her office's security log confirms her alibi. Then Daphne calls with a huge break. The Facebook accounts that posted negatively about Tara are fake. Karina clarifies that her argument with Mark wasn't about Tara. It was about wood for their new deck. She scoffs at the idea that she'd be jealous of a nanny. She also reminds them she deactivated her account after her single post about Rosa. Morgan suddenly realizes the nannies were behind the fake posts. They had time to post during story time at the library because they wouldn't be watching the kids and used fake accounts to infiltrate the Facebook group. They were the ones who bullied Karina after she reported Rosa. And when Rosa lost her job, they turned on Tara for taking her place, especially since she worked for less. Morgan notices all the kids' lunchboxes have Spice Girl stickers. Rosa was Sporty Spice, and Tara refused to use Rosa's old lunchbox when she took the job. That's when Morgan zeroes in on Oksana. Oksana is Russian, and the fake posts use Russian capitalization conventions, where days of the week aren't capitalized. Tara's calendar had Exaltation of the Cross, marked at 7 p.m. on September 27th, but Catholics celebrate that on the 14th, which means Tara wasn't going to her church, she was going to Oksana's. Morgan pieces it together. Tara figured out Oksana was the one harassing her online. She planned to confront her at church, and Oksana, realizing Tara could get her deported for fake identity, killed her. The nannies finally crack under pressure and admit they were covering for Oksana because they were scared of her. Oksana confesses everything. The Russian government persecuted her family, and she refuses to go back. She'd rather go to prison in America than be deported. The case is closed, but Morgan takes a moment to meet Jeff at the park and hands him a photo of Tara and Ward together. It's obvious she loved him, and Jeff gets emotional looking at the picture. As Morgan watches her own kids playing and laughing together, she realizes how quickly time is slipping away. Case 11. The sauna at the end of the stairs. On his deathbed, George Donovan makes a shocking confession. He killed his son-in-law, Barry Johnson, 10 years ago by pushing him down the basement stairs. The case, known as the Bucket Lane murder, had been widely covered in the media at the time, but remained unsolved. Barry's body had been found in a sauna, severely burned, but the autopsy revealed that his actual cause of death was a broken neck. A drop of Barry's blood had been found on George's shirt, but it wasn't enough to convict him. The defense also introduced another suspect, Billy Rose, a known cocaine dealer who had been in the area that night. Despite suspicions, the case never reached a clear resolution. Selena, who had been one of the detectives on the case, never believed George was guilty. Now, with his confession, she suspects he is taking the blame to restore the family's reputation and protect someone else. Determined to uncover the truth, Morgan meticulously reviews crime scene photos. After hours of analysis, she realizes that Barry was never pushed down the stairs. Instead, she believes he was killed in the common bathroom upstairs. She reconstructs the scenario. The killer hears Barry in the shower and decides to use a hairdryer to electrocute him, hoping it would appear as a heart attack. However, the outlet catches fire, leaving behind evidence of foul play. To cover their tracks, the killer moves Barry's body and drops it down the laundry chute, causing the fatal neck injury. That explains how Barry's blood ended up on George's shirt, as George's shirt was in the laundry room. Finally, the killer moves Barry to the sauna to further obscure the cause of death. Morgan presents her theory to the team, pointing out that the bathroom outlet had been replaced shortly after the murder. Selena initially doubts her, arguing that modern hairdryers have built-in safety features, but Morgan counters with a crucial detail. The hairdryer in the crime scene photo was an older model from the 1980s, which lacked those protections. Morgan, Selena, and Cara Deck visit the Donovan mansion to verify her findings. They locate the scorch marks near the bathroom outlet. They drop a test dummy down the laundry chute, and it lands in the basement, sustaining injuries consistent with Barry's. The evidence supports Morgan's theory. Meanwhile, at the precinct, Neda Donovan, the ex-wife of Clark Donovan, arrives with a documentary crew, eager to capitalize on the case. She warns Daphne and Lev that the family will do whatever it takes to protect one another, making it difficult to get the truth. At the mansion, the family is questioned. They confirm that tensions between Barry and George had been escalating, particularly after a dinner where Barry mocked George for always bailing them out financially. Barry left the table after the argument, but the real turning point of the evening was revealed by Neda at the station. Barry had been physically abusing his wife, Heather. During the dinner, when Heather's robe caught fire, her mother saw the bruises, exposing years of domestic violence. The family confronted Barry that night, after which he left the room. Another crucial piece of information emerges. Neda saw Billy, the cocaine dealer, near the house that night, confirming his presence at the scene. A new prime suspect emerges. Morgan pieces everything together but struggles to identify the true killer. Then, Captain Cost arrives at the mansion to shut down the investigation, furious that Selena continued digging into a closed case. However, in the middle of his speech, Morgan suddenly realizes the truth. Cody Donovan, Barry's son, was the real murderer. She explains that Cody, just 15 at the time, knew about his father's abuse. That night, after the family's confrontation with Barry, Cody took matters into his own hands. He electrocuted Barry in the shower, then dropped his body down the laundry chute to stage an accident. Afterward, he calmly returned to the dining room and played Monopoly with the rest of the family, ensuring he had an alibi. The captain argues that a teenager couldn't have orchestrated such a complex murder, but Morgan counters that Cody wasn't an ordinary teenager. He was a prodigy, recruited by MIT. He had the intelligence and precision to carry out the crime. At first, the family refuses to believe it, but then Cody confesses. He says the guilt has been overwhelming, and he had told his grandfather, George, a week earlier that he wanted to come forward. To protect him, George confessed instead. The aftermath: Cody is taken into custody. Because he was a minor at the time of the crime, he will likely serve less than 3 years. The family is devastated. Before leaving, the captain warns Selena never to go behind his back again, but he also acknowledges that Morgan's instincts were correct. The episode ends with Morgan walking home, wearing a police badge, not because she earned one, but because she bought it from a pawn shop. Case 12. Partners. A man steps out of his private jet and starts foaming at the mouth. Morgan is called to the scene, and the victim is identified as Anson Pierce, founder of a controversial deepfake creating social media platform. He was traveling with his security detail, all of whom were unharmed. The coroner suspects poisoning. While the team is at the scene, FBI Special Agent Ronnie arrives, claiming jurisdiction due to the death occurring in U.S. airspace. He dismisses the LAPD's involvement, believing the poisoning is too sophisticated for them to handle. Morgan observes that Anson's popped blood vessels suggest a recent argument. She attempts to board the plane to investigate further, but Ronnie stops her and tells Karadec to pull back his team. As they leave, Morgan questions Karadec about Ronnie's attitude. He admits he's not a fan, as Ronnie is overbearing and feels he can do no wrong. Karadec also reveals Ronnie was his partner but doesn't want to elaborate further. Back at the station, Oz informs the team that Congress has been trying to regulate Anson's company for years, highlighting the potential for his technology to spread misinformation, influence politics, and ruin lives. Ronnie arrives, and his reception is mixed. Ronnie announces he'll be working with Karadec to question witnesses and Anson's family, a prospect Karadec clearly dreads. While they're conducting interviews, Morgan asks Selena about Karadec and Ronnie's history. Selena reveals they were a highly successful team before a falling out. A potential injection site is found on Anson's shoulder, but Morgan disputes Ronnie's theory that this is the point of entry for the poison. The medical examiner suspects the poison is related to anthrax, prompting Ronnie to push for transferring Anson's body to the FBI immediately. Anson's security detail consists of highly trained individuals, a former Navy SEAL, a SWAT officer, and a Coast Guard member. They are stunned by Anson's death and worried about the implications for their careers, as Anson dying on their watch will make it difficult for them to find future employment. Karadec examines Anson's detailed calendar, which reveals a mysterious 2-hour gap for a meeting in Orange County. The security team claims ignorance about the meeting's purpose, stating they simply drove Anson to the location and waited for him. As Ronnie prepares to leave, he reminds Karadec to transfer Anson's body to the FBI. Karadec's non-committal response makes it clear he's resisting. Morgan intervenes, asking about a flash drive found in evidence. She points out it couldn't be Anson's, as he designed a proprietary drive still used by his company. This drive belongs to a competitor. Upon inspection, the drive immediately installs a virus, crippling the LAPD's computer systems. Daphne works to remove the malware, realizing that whoever provided the drive to Anson likely also poisoned him. Oz begins reviewing CCTV footage from Anson's LA meeting up until his departure. Ronnie offers to have the FBI analyze satellite footage, and Selena assigns Karadec and Morgan to work with him. An FBI profiler suggests the killer is likely an unemployed, single white male who was close to Anson. Morgan is skeptical, arguing that the killer could be someone far removed from Anson's life, but deeply opposed to his company's technology. She believes the murder was personal, not purely business-related. Footage surfaces of a man slipping the flash drive into Anson's pocket. FBI facial recognition identifies him as Simon Keating, matching the profiler's description. During questioning, Simon claims he was trying to protect Anson from his own cybersecurity team by hacking him, revealing himself to be a hacker. A masked individual ambushes the coroner's van transporting Anson's body, forcing the driver out, and then detonating the vehicle, completely destroying the remains. Ronnie arrives at the station, furious that the LAPD had possession of the body in the first place. He confronts Karadec publicly, but the team, including Selena, defends their own. Morgan diffuses the situation, reminding everyone to focus on Anson's 2-hour meeting. They realize the van attacker couldn't be Simon, as he's in custody. Karadec suspects multiple people are involved in the crime. Ronnie and Karadec clash again, each accusing the other of withholding information. Karadec demands full FBI cooperation, offering a deal. If the LAPD exhausts all FBI intel without results, they'll step aside. Ronnie agrees, Morgan and Karadek go to the FBI, where Ronnie provides a massive amount of data. Morgan works through the night, trying to piece together the information. By morning, she hasn't cracked the case, but Karadek notices she keeps returning to Kenneth Sutton, a former employee of California Poison Control. Sutton's 24-year-old daughter, Julie, committed suicide after being targeted by deepfakes created by Anson's platform. The FBI previously questioned Sutton, who claims he only leaves his house on Wednesdays to visit his daughter's grave. They review cemetery footage and confirm Sutton's Wednesday visits. However, they notice that in the photo taken 2 days before Anson's death, Sutton wore gloves while placing flowers on the grave, something he hadn't done before. This leads them to suspect the poison might have been hidden within the flowers. Morgan and Karadek locate Kenneth's apartment. After confronting him, Kenneth flees, only to fall down the stairs and die before they can question him. They search his apartment, where Morgan reveals the devastating 31-second deepfake video that drove Julie to suicide. Karadek notes that Morgan's initial profile of the killer was accurate. Morgan describes Kenneth's butterfly organizing style, where everything is visible and purposeful, despite appearing like a pack rat. The FBI arrives, and Ronnie is pissed that the LAPD went after the suspect without the FBI there, leading to the suspect's death. Karadek talks some sense into him, saying they can't solve this case with constant bickering. He also tells him he called Ronnie multiple times, but his number wasn't going through. They come to a compromise and work together. Back at the station, Morgan gets Karadek to admit he misses working with Ronnie. He finally explains their falling out. They were a top detective duo, but someone jealous of their success framed them for taking a bribe. Though the money was simply mislogged, Ronnie took an FBI job, leaving Karadek to clear their names. While looking at Anson's autopsy photos, Karadek realizes the LA meeting might have been personal, noting marks on Anson's body suggestive of sexual activity. He asks Ronnie to pull more footage of the building and suggests checking the back exit, suspecting Anson might have been meeting someone at a nearby hotel. Ronnie surprisingly thanks Morgan and Karadek for leading them to Aria Vale, who runs a nonprofit advocating for AI regulation and the shutdown of Anson's company. Suddenly, Morgan receives a frantic call from her son. Ludo, her ex-partner, has collapsed and refuses to let Elliot or Ava call 911. Morgan rushes home. Ludo claims he simply fainted from lightheadedness, but Morgan senses he's hiding something and is reluctant to talk. She starts apologizing, but he reassures her that they are a team when it comes to the kids, and she doesn't need to apologize for needing his help. Ronnie interrogates Aria, sensing she's being deceptive about her meetings with Anson. She eventually admits their last meeting was heated, revealing Anson was in restraints, and a mark on his body came from her earring. Ronnie and Karadek confirm that neither Simon nor Aria was near Julie Sutton's grave. Morgan joins them, and Karadek believes they're overlooking a clue from Kenneth's apartment. Morgan, noticing the books in the photos, quotes Louisa May Alcott, "It takes 2 flints to make a fire." She realizes that Parker, one of Anson's security guards, had a flint on his keychain, likely belonging to Julie. Morgan's theory posits that Parker and Julie were romantically involved. Driven by revenge for Julie's suicide, Kenneth and Parker conspired to murder Anson. Kenneth created the poison and applied it to a dog collar, which Parker then placed on Anson's dog. The poison was likely absorbed through Anson's skin. An FBI team attempts to arrest Parker, but he's already fleeing to the Valley Airport on Anson's jet. Daphne enlists Simon to remotely disable the plane's electronics. Parker is apprehended as he exits the plane. After the case is closed, Ronnie apologizes to Karadek for abandoning him. Later, Karadek tells Morgan that Ronnie offered him a job, but he declined. Morgan is pleased that he finally acknowledges their partnership. Morgan returns home to a surprise taco night and a screening of 2001, Ludo's favorite movie. She realizes they all need to slow down and appreciate each other. Case 13. Let's play. The season finale of High Potential opens with Ludo giving Ava a driving lesson, a sight that terrifies Morgan. She immediately asks the detectives to take note of Ava's license plate and pull her over anytime they see her, convinced that Ava has inherited her reckless tendencies behind the wheel. At the station, Lieutenant Selena Soto reminds everyone to RSVP, for the police gala attendance is mandatory. But before anyone can focus on party plans, Karadek receives an alarming email from the LAPD tip line. The attachment is a photo of a man tied to a chair, holding a sign that reads, 2 hours to make your move. The detectives aren't sure if this is some sort of twisted game or a real threat. Oz quickly identifies the man as Spencer Wallace, a 37-year-old lawyer with no family ties. He and Daphne head to his apartment, where they find an unopened jigsaw puzzle on his doorstep. Back at the station, Morgan assembles the puzzle, realizing it's a map, but a key piece is missing, marking Spencer's location. Following the lead, Karadek and Morgan arrive at the designated area, where they find Ochos Locos game cards hanging from a tree. A message instructs them to pick a card and follow one of 2 paths if they want to save Spencer. Time is running out, Oz and Daphne discover that Spencer is diabetic and could slip into a coma within hours. Morgan and Karadek play along, solving a hopscotch-based math puzzle that leads them to a storage facility. The unit belongs to Spencer, but it's completely empty. When the team finally locates him, he's barely conscious. At the hospital, he recalls being kidnapped by someone in a white anime mask who wanted him to play games. When he refused, they knocked him out. Morgan realizes the kidnapper isn't targeting Spencer. They're playing a game with LAPD. Morgan stops at a cafe and runs into Gio, who has information about Roman's disappearance. Roman was terrified before he vanished, and a woman named Lila Flynn was involved, but Morgan has never heard of her. At home, Ava shows Morgan a memory book she's making for her dad, just in case he's ever found. She also insists on picking out Morgan's outfit for the gala. Daphne and Oz receive a call about a new lead at the hotel hosting the police gala. Morgan joins them and discovers a baby stroller filled with creepy dolls, with Scrabble tiles spelling out, "The fun has just begun." No one knows who left the stroller, but Morgan is convinced the person is watching them. Back at the station, the team tries to connect the dots but comes up empty. Morgan is sure the dolls hold meaning, but she can't crack the code yet. Karadek wonders if anyone besides Spencer knew about the storage unit. That's when Oz speaks up. He did. Oz explains that he's part of a private grief support group. He lost his dad last year and now realizes Spencer was in it too. Spencer had mentioned the storage unit, meaning the kidnapper, or whoever's behind this twisted game, could be in the group. Daphne and Oz visit the support group, where everyone remembers Spencer fondly. They also recall a guy named David, who was obsessed with games. After his sister died, he was devastated that their game nights ended. Morgan updates Karadek and Selena about Gio, and a possible lead involving Layla Flynn. Karadek warns Morgan not to trust Gio, and makes her promise to be careful. As Daphne and Oz wait for a sketch artist to help identify David, the group leader grows concerned. Sierra, a regular, hasn't shown up. She never misses a meeting. With a sketch and a possible suspect, David, the team reviews their clues. He's a white male, around 5 feet 10 inches, with a beard. But they still don't know why he's acting now. They suspect Sierra could be his second victim, so Adam and Morgan head to her place. The signs of a struggle are obvious. While scanning the apartment, Morgan notices a bookcase has been moved. When they turn off the lights, a hidden message appears on the wall. You can't tell in the dark. Morgan focuses on the word tell and makes a connection. Sierra is an ASL interpreter. Since sign language requires visibility, it's impossible to communicate in complete darkness. That's when Morgan realizes the doll's hands might be signing something. Deciphering the hand positions, she gets COX1PI and flips it around to PICOX1, a clue pointing to Pico Boulevard and First, an art gallery there shut down some time ago. The team rushes to the location and finds Sierra locked inside a safe, crying. A timer shows she's been in the box for 36 minutes. With Sierra's oxygen running out and SWAT still 45 minutes away, Morgan realizes the paintings on the wall are part of the next game, Jacks. The artwork depicts how the game is played in different countries. Americans use 1 ball. Central Asia uses 10 stones. Southern Asia uses 5 stones. Japan uses 7 bags of beans. Morgan pieces it together. 11057 is the combination, and Sierra is saved. While Sierra is safe, the team knows David won't stop until he wins. Each member of the grief group is assigned a cop for protection. Daphne, as always, has Oz's back. Karadek suggests canceling the police gala, but Selena refuses to even consider it. That night, Morgan arrives home to find Ava, with a little help from Ludo, has picked out a stunning selection of outfits for the gala. But Morgan can't focus on dresses. Her mind is stuck on the case. Karadek secretly asks Ronnie for help investigating Layla Flynn. He learns that she was an FBI field agent murdered 15 years ago. One of her last cases involved Roman, and he disappeared right after her death. On his way to the gala, immediately Oz starts his car, his airbag deploys. Knocking him unconscious, a man wearing a mask shows up. At the gala, Selena, Karadek, and Daphne arrive looking sharp. But Morgan and Oz are nowhere to be seen. Karadek informs Selena that Roman was an FBI informant. He also tells Morgan he'll handle Gio from now on. Tom arrives soon after, and he and Morgan share a dance. Daphne checks on Oz and finds his car abandoned with blood on the deflated airbag. Inside, an hourglass sits on the seat, along with a note, "Marco." Back at the station, the detectives piece together the clues. Daphne notices that each game's clues were written in different fonts. Morgan asks for the fonts in the order they appeared: Romana, Haptic Script, Olicana, Kiln Sans, and Avant-Garde. The first letters spell RHOKA, which jogs Morgan's memory. JR. Roca is an architect. Only one of Roca's houses has a pool, so the team rushes over and finds Oz chained at the bottom. There's an air tank and scuba gear, but no bubbles are rising. Karadek pulls Oz to the surface while Daphne performs CPR. After a few heart-stopping moments, Oz finally comes around. He'll be fine, but Selena warns him never to scare them like that again. CSI moves in to search the house for more clues. It turns out the house belongs to the Pecks. Their 38-year-old son, David, lost his twin sister when they were 10. The Pecks, who have been at their vacation home, are estranged from him and have no idea what's been happening in their house. Strangely, the police can't find any pictures of David. Later, Morgan and the kids are loading groceries into the car, casually discussing potential family vacation spots. A helpful stranger picks up a fallen item, and Ava, ever observant, thinks he's flirting with Morgan. Getting home. As she and her kids put away groceries, Elliot finds an unfamiliar board game in the bag, and Morgan freezes. The back of the box has a sticker with XX eyes and a chilling message. "You're the one, Morgan. We shall play again. Me and you." Back at the station, the team uncovers a devastating twist. David, their prime suspect, has been in a rehab facility for 4 months. The real game player is still out there. As the pieces fall into place, Karadec calls Morgan with shocking news. Roman is alive, and I know where he is. Do we think Morgan will beat him at his own game before he gets to her family? What did you think of High Potential Season 1? Don't forget to like and subscribe for more recaps.